The apartment had been empty for 6 weeks. Frank Castle stood in what used to be his living room, staring at the space where his daughter's toys had scattered across the carpet. The landlord had cleared everything out. Professional, efficient, like it never happened. The police report called it collateral damage from a soup incident. 3 paragraphs, no names for the perpetrator. The file noted compensation pending from Vought International's Victim Relief Fund. Pending review, pending closure, pending nothing. Frank had read it 14 times. Each word the same. Each word a lie wrapped in legal language. He started with the witnesses. The neighbor from 4B saw the whole thing from her window. She told Frank about the hero in the blue suit, the one with the cape. She described how the fight had spilled into the street, how the blast hit the car, how fast the flames moved. 2 days later, the neighbor couldn't remember his visit. A nice man from Vought had come by, she said. They'd helped her understand she'd been confused. Trauma does that. Makes people see things wrong. They'd given her a check. Everyone was very understanding. The traffic cameras on the corner had been rerouted for maintenance that day. City records confirmed it. So did the backup files. Nothing to see, nothing recorded. The maintenance logs were signed and dated, all proper, all clean. Frank found the tow truck driver who'd hauled away the wreckage. The man had been drinking when Frank knocked on his door at 2 a.m. Drinking hard enough that the questions didn't register as strange until Frank was already gone. The car had gone to a private facility in Jersey. No public salvage yard. The driver had been paid triple rate for a same-day haul. Cash. The facility address led to an empty lot that had been rezoned for commercial development 3 weeks after the incident. City planning had the permits. Everything filed correctly. Frank pulled the phone records next. His wife had called 911. The call log showed the connection. 14 seconds. But the recording was corrupted. Technical malfunction. The dispatch supervisor expressed sincere apologies. These things happen with older systems. They were upgrading soon. The EMTs who'd responded to the scene had transferred to different stations within a week. 1 to Buffalo, 1 to Portland. 1 had taken early retirement. Frank tracked down the 1 in Buffalo. The conversation lasted 4 minutes before the man's voice changed. He didn't remember much he said. Busy night, lots of calls. Maybe Frank should talk to someone. Grief counselor, support group. The man hung up before Frank could respond. The pattern was efficient. Not perfect. Efficient. Every thread led to a wall. Every wall had Vaught's name somewhere in the foundation. The company didn't hide. They didn't need to. They built the maze in plain sight and dared anyone to call it what it was. Frank had been a Marine. He understood chains of command. He understood how systems protected themselves. But this wasn't a system. This was a machine, and it ran on bodies nobody counted. The evidence locker for his case sat in a precinct basement in Brooklyn. Frank waited until the 3rd shift, when the desk sergeant was alone. The man was older, close to retirement, the kind who'd seen enough to stop asking questions that wouldn't get answered. Frank didn't threaten. He didn't need to. He put $200 on the desk and asked for 15 minutes. The sergeant looked at the money, looked at Frank, then looked at the clock on the wall. "Camera's been glitchy tonight," the sergeant said. He picked up the bills and walked to the break room. The evidence box was thin. Photos of the scene already sanitized. The blast pattern had been photographed, but the analysis report was missing. In its place, a note referencing an ongoing federal investigation. No case number, no contact information, just a stamp and a signature too blurred to read. Frank found it at the bottom of the box. A USB drive in a plastic bag labeled as personal effects recovered from the vehicle. No inventory number, no chain of custody log. He pocketed it. The sergeant was back at his desk. When Frank returned the empty bus, the man didn't look up, just nodded toward the exit. Frank watched the drive's contents on a laptop in a motel room 40 miles outside the city. The files were fragments. Partial video from someone's dashboard camera. The footage was dark, shaky, and cut off after 9 seconds. But 9 seconds was enough. The soup in blue, the fight, the blast that turned the car into a fireball, and then the cleaning crew. They arrived 4 minutes after the flames died. Not fire department, not police. A white van with no markings and a team in hazmat suits who moved like they'd done this 1,000 times before. They cordoned off the area with equipment that looked military. They scraped. They bagged. They hosed down the asphalt until the burn marks faded to shadows. One of them sprayed something on the surrounding walls. The residue dissolved before the camera cut out. Frank replayed it 6 times. The van had no plates, but the side panel had a QR code stenciled near the rear door. Corporate inventory tracking. The kind of detail nobody notices until they're looking for it. He ran the code through 3 different databases before he found a match. Vought Logistics, internal supply chain for facilities management. The manifest listed the van's Home Depot as a warehouse in Red Hook. Frank spent 2 days watching the warehouse. The crews came and went in shifts. Always the white vans, always the same efficient rhythm. They didn't look like cleaners. They looked like soldiers. On the 3rd night, Frank followed one of the vans to a scene in Midtown. Another incident. Another soup fight that spilled into civilian space. By the time Frank arrived, the crew was already working. They moved through the wreckage like surgeons, extracting anything that could tell a story and erasing the rest. He took photos from a rooftop across the street. Watched them load the bags into the van. Watched them spray down the scene until it looked like nothing had happened. When the van returned to the warehouse, Frank was waiting inside. The crew lead was a man in his 40s, compact and calm, the kind who'd learned not to react fast. He found Frank sitting on a stack of chemical drums in the back corner of the storage area. The man's hand went to his radio, but Frank shook his head. "Don't." The man's hand stopped. He looked at Frank, looked at the exit, then back at Frank. "You're not supposed to be here." "Nobody is," Frank said. The man didn't move. "Smart. My family died 6 weeks ago," Frank said. "Your team cleaned it up. I want to know who gave the order." The man's face stayed blank. Professional. "I don't know what you're talking about." Frank stood. The man tensed, but didn't step back. "You will," Frank said. He didn't hurt the man, didn't need to. He walked past him toward the warehouse office, a small room with a desk and a filing cabinet that looked older than the building. The crew lead didn't follow, didn't call for help, just stood there, watching. The files were organized by date and district. Incident reports with addresses, times, and cleanup codes. No names, no details. Just numbers that matched up with news reports of soup activity. Every incident had a corresponding entry. Every entry had been closed. Frank found his street, his date. The entry was 3 lines. Incident code. Cleanup team assigned. Materials disposed. Authorization signature at the bottom. Digital, untraceable. But there was a note in the margin, handwritten, a single word, Odessa. Frank took photos of everything. The files, the logs, the authorization chains that went up into Vaught's administrative structure and then disappeared into acronyms and department codes that didn't exist on any public record. When he left the warehouse, he stopped at the entrance and looked back. The crew lead was still standing in the same spot watching. Frank pulled a can of spray paint from his jacket and turned to the wall beside the door. He painted it in broad strokes. The skull, white on concrete, large enough to see from the street. The crew lead's face finally changed. Not fear. Recognition. Frank walked into the night. Behind him, the skull watched over the warehouse like a promise. The system had killed his family and erased the evidence. It had turned murder into paperwork and made the paperwork disappear. Frank understood now. This wasn't about justice. Justice required a system that worked. This was about punishment. And punishment didn't need permission. The crew supervisor found the bodies at 4 a.m. 3 men in hazmat suits arranged in the alley behind the warehouse like discarded equipment. No blood. No struggle. Just bodies that had stopped working. The supervisor stood over them with a flashlight, the beam shaking in his hand, and tried to remember the last time he'd checked the perimeter. 20 minutes. He'd checked 20 minutes ago. Everything had been clear. He called it in. The phone rang twice before a voice answered, crisp and awake despite the hour. Report. We have a situation at the Red Hook facility, the supervisor said. His voice cracked on the last word. He cleared his throat. 3 down. No active threat visible. Cause... The supervisor crouched next to the nearest body. The man's neck bent at an angle that didn't happen from falling. Unknown. It's clean work. A pause on the other end. Keys clicking. Secure the facility. Lock down protocol. We're sending a team. The line went dead. The supervisor stood and turned toward the warehouse entrance. The skull was still there on the wall, white paint gleaming under the security lights. It hadn't been there yesterday. He'd walked past that wall 100 times, and now it watched him like an accusation. His radio crackled. Supervisor, we've got a breach in Storage Bay 3. The supervisor ran. Bay 3 housed the sensitive materials, the items too dangerous or too valuable to dispose of through normal channels. Weapon fragments, compound V samples from contaminated sites, documentation that didn't exist anywhere else. The bay door hung open, not forced, unlocked. The electronic keypad showed no signs of tampering, but the access log had been wiped. The last entry timestamp was from 6 hours ago, when the evening shift had secured the area. Inside the shelving units stood intact. Nothing disturbed. The supervisor walked the rows checking inventory codes against his tablet. Everything present, everything accounted for, except the files. The cabinet in the corner office sat empty drawers, pulled out folders, gone. The supervisor's hands went cold. Those files contained incident reports dating back 18 months. Addresses, timestamps, authorization chains. The kind of information Vaught paid him extremely well to keep locked down. He backed out of the bay and keyed his radio. This is Supervisor. We have a theft. Files are gone from Bay 3 storage. The response came fast. What files? Incident logs, cleanup authorizations, all of it. Static. Then, stand by for instructions. Do not leave the facility. The supervisor walked back to the alley. The bodies were still there. His crewmen he'd worked with for months, reduced to evidence in a crime scene he didn't understand. One of them had a family. 2 kids. The supervisor had met them at a company barbecue last summer. He looked at the skull on the wall, at the bodies in the alley, at the empty file cabinet visible through the bay door. Whoever had done this hadn't just killed his people. They'd taken the one thing Vought couldn't replace: the truth. The news broke at 6 a.m. Not the deaths, not the theft. Those stayed buried in internal channels and encrypted communications. The public story was simpler. A terrorist cell had attacked a Vought logistics facility in Red Hook. 3 employees dead. The perpetrator remained at large. Vought International condemned this senseless act of violence and called on law enforcement to bring the guilty party to justice. The statement included a photo. Security footage from the warehouse enhanced and cropped, showing a figure in dark clothing near the entrance. The image was blurry enough to deny identification, but clear enough to suggest threat. Below the photo, a sketch of the skull symbol found at the scene. The statement described it as a calling card, a signature, evidence of coordination and planning. Vought's head of security was quoted extensively, warning the public about anti-soup extremism and the danger posed by individuals who sought to undermine the heroes protecting American lives. The statement ended with a tip line number and a reward: $50,000 for information leading to arrest and conviction. By 7 a.m., the story had been picked up by every major outlet. By 8, social media was splitting into camps. Some called the attacker a terrorist. Others called him a patriot. The skull became a meme within an hour, reproduced and shared and argued over by people who'd never heard of Red Hook and didn't care about cleanup crews. Vought's PR team monitored the trends from their offices in Midtown. Metrics scrolled across screens: sentiment analysis, engagement rates. The terrorism angle was playing well with their core demographics, but the counter-narrative was gaining traction faster than projected. One analyst flagged a cluster of posts questioning why a logistics facility needed hazmat teams. Another noted the uptick in searches for Vought incident response protocols. The department head made a call. Within 15 minutes, 3 verified accounts with a combined following of 8 million users posted threads explaining the necessity of specialized cleanup teams in a world with superpowered individuals. The threads were informative, reasonable, and sourced with links to Vought's public safety initiatives. The counter-narrative slowed, didn't stop, but slowed. The department head sent a memo to executive leadership: situation contained, monitoring ongoing. Thus, Frank watched the news coverage from a diner in Queens. The television above the counter showed the same loop. His blurred image, the skull. The somber-faced anchors discussing tragedy and terrorism. The waitress refilled his coffee without asking. The cup was still half full, but she seemed nervous, like movement would ward off whatever tension hung in the air. Frank's phone sat on the table next to his plate. He'd already uploaded the photos from the warehouse to 3 different servers with dead-drop encryption. The files were out there now, floating in corners of the internet, where Vought's scrubbing algorithms wouldn't find them immediately. Eventually, someone would. But not yet. The television switched to an interview. A Vought spokesperson in a suit that cost more than the diner's monthly rent. She spoke in the smooth, practiced cadence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times, expressing sympathy, calling for unity, reminding viewers that heroes put their lives on the line every day to keep people safe. The crawl at the bottom of the screen listed the names of the dead. The 3 cleanup crew members, employees, family men, killed in the line of duty. Frank looked at his coffee. The crew lead from the warehouse wasn't on the list. Either he'd lived, or Vought wasn't ready to add his name to the narrative yet. The diner door chimed. A man walked in, scanned the room, and sat at the counter 3 stools down from where Frank could see him in the mirror behind the register. The man ordered coffee. Didn't look at the television. Didn't look at Frank. Frank waited. 2 minutes passed. The man's coffee arrived. He drank it black, no sugar, and pulled out his phone. Scrolled through something. Put the phone away. Then he spoke low enough that only Frank would hear. "You've got their attention." Frank didn't turn. That was the point. Killing their people sends a message. Stealing their files sends a different one. "Good." The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Name's Butcher. I've been doing what you're doing for a while now. Difference is, I've got help. Don't need help." Butcher's smile widened. "Didn't say you did, but you're going to need intel. Vaught's a big fucking machine. You just kicked one gear. They've got 100 more. Frank finally looked at him. Butcher was lean-weathered with the kind of eyes that had seen bad things and decided to see more. "What do you want?" Frank asked. "Same thing you do. Dead soups and a burning tower." Butcher leaned back on his stool. "But I'm smart enough to know one bloke with a grudge isn't enough. You've got skills. I've got resources. We can help each other." "I work alone." "You did. Past tense." Butcher tilted his head toward the television. "But now you're famous. Vaught's gonna throw everything at you. Money, lawyers, soups. You won't last a week." Frank picked up his coffee, drank, put the cup down. "I'll last." Butcher studied him for a moment, then shrugged. "Probably, but you'll last longer with us." He slid a card across the counter. No name, just a phone number written in pen. "You change your mind, call that. We'll be waiting." Butcher dropped a $10 bill next to his cup and walked out. The door chimed behind him. Frank looked at the card, picked it up. The number was local, probably a burner. He put the card in his pocket and went back to his coffee. On the television, the spokesperson was wrapping up her interview. The anchor thanked her for her time. The screen cut to commercial. An ad for Vaught's newest energy drink endorsed by a soupy whose name Frank didn't recognize. The waitress came by again. "Anything else?" Frank shook his head. Left cash on the table and walked out. The street was waking up. Traffic building. People heading to work with phones in their hands and headphones in their ears. Nobody looked at him. Nobody cared. Somewhere in the city, Vaught was mobilizing, increasing security, tightening protocols, hunting. Frank had killed 3 of their people and stolen documentation that could unravel months of cover-ups. He'd painted a skull on their wall and walked away. They'd come for him. He knew that. He wanted them to. Because when they came, he'd be ready. And this time the cleanup crew wouldn't be able to erase what happened. This time someone was watching. The soup called himself Flashbang, real name Derek Moss, according to the research Frank had compiled over 3 days of surveillance. 26 years old. Compound V injection at 19 through Vaught's college recruitment program. Power set localized explosive bursts from his hands bright enough to blind and loud enough to rupture eardrums within 15 feet. C-list at best. The kind of hero who showed up at mall openings and corporate events, not actual emergencies. His contract had him touring the tri-state area doing PR work for Vaught's Youth Outreach Initiative. Schools, community centers, anywhere with cameras and parents who wanted their kids to meet a real superhero. Frank had found him through the incident report stolen from Red Hook. Flashbang's name appeared in 3 separate files over the past year. Civilian casualties marked as accidents. Property damage written off as collateral from hero work. In each case, Vaught's legal team had settled quietly, and the sanitization teams had scrubbed the scenes clean. The 3rd incident had involved a college student who'd filmed Flashbang throwing a drunk girl out of a bar in Hoboken. The video showed the soup using his power to blow out the front windows when the bartender protested. 2 people had needed surgery for glass wounds. The video had disappeared from social media within an hour. The student who filmed it had accepted a settlement and signed an NDA 3 days later. Frank had tracked down the bartender. The man still had scars on his forearms from the glass. He'd wanted to press charges, but the cops had explained how these things worked. The hero had been defending himself. The witnesses couldn't agree on what happened. Vaught's lawyers had files thicker than phone books. Better to take the money and move on. The bartender had given Frank an address. Flashbang kept an apartment in Weehawken paid for by Vaught, where he went between appearances. Frank watched the building for 2 days. Flashbang kept a pattern. He'd return around 11 p.m. after whatever event Vaught had scheduled, usually drunk, always alone. He'd park his car in the underground garage and take the elevator to the 8th floor. Interior cameras covered the lobby and hallways, but the garage had blind spots near the maintenance access. On the 3rd night, Frank was waiting in one of those blind spots when Flashbang's car pulled in. The soup stumbled out, phone in one hand, already laughing at something on the screen. He didn't notice Frank until he was 5 feet from the elevator. "Hey, man." Flashbang blinked, trying to focus. "This is resident parking. You lost?" Frank stepped forward. Flashbang's expression shifted. Recognition, maybe. Or just the instinct that something was wrong. "Do I know you?" The soup's hands came up, palms out. Not a defensive gesture. A threat. "You need to back off." Frank didn't stop. Flashbang's palms flared white. "Last warning." The blast came fast. Sound and light compressed into a wave that would have dropped anyone standing in the open. Frank had already moved. He'd spent 3 days studying footage of Flashbang's power. The soup telegraphed every burst with a half-second wind-up hands, pulling back before the discharge. Frank stepped inside the arc as the blast went off too close for the energy to build properly. The light scorched past his shoulder. The sound rattled his teeth. But he was already driving his elbow into Flashbang's throat. The soup gagged, stumbling backward. His hands came up again, desperate now, trying to create distance for another burst. Frank didn't give him the space. He grabbed Flashbang's right wrist and twisted, hyperextending the joint until something popped. The soup screamed. Frank drove his knee into the man's solar plexus, folding him forward, then brought his elbow down on the back of Flashbang's skull. The soup hit the concrete, tried to push himself up. Frank kicked him in the ribs hard enough to crack bone. Flashbang rolled onto his back, gasping. His left hand rose, shaking palm aimed at Frank's face. Frank stomped on the wrist. The bones crunched under his boot. Flashbang shrieked. "You killed people," Frank said. His voice was flat, matter of fact. "Vaught covered it up. You kept doing it." "I didn't." Flashbang coughed blood. "It was an accident. I didn't mean. You meant it enough to let them bury it." Frank pulled a combat knife from his belt. Standard issue, nothing fancy. He'd carried one like it in 3 deployments. Flashbang's eyes went wide. Wait, please. I can pay you. Vaught will pay, whatever you want." Frank knelt beside him. "I don't want money." The knife went in under the rib cage, angled up toward the heart. Flashbang convulsed once, then went still. His eyes stayed open, staring at the garage ceiling. Frank pulled the knife free and wiped it on the soup's jacket. He stood checking the garage for witnesses. Empty. The cameras overhead pointed away from this corner, just like his recon had confirmed. He reached into his pack and pulled out a spray can. White paint. the same kind he'd used at the warehouse. On the concrete wall beside the elevator, Frank painted the skull. Quick, efficient, large enough to read from the entrance. He left Flashbang where he'd fallen and walked toward the maintenance exit. The door opened onto an alley 2 blocks from the building. He'd walked the route 4 times during his surveillance. No cameras, no witnesses. By the time anyone found the body, Frank would be gone. Doubt. The news broke at 6 a.m. Again. Flashbang's murder dominated the morning cycle. The footage from the garage cameras showed nothing useful. Just a body on the ground and a skull painted on the wall. No clear shot of the killer. No evidence left behind, except the message. Vaught's statement came within the hour. They called it a tragedy, an assassination. Proof that anti-soup extremism had escalated from vandalism to murder. The same spokesperson from the Red Hook incident appeared on 3 networks before breakfast, her expression grave, her talking points airtight. She described Flashbang as a hero who had dedicated his life to helping others. A young man with a bright future cut down by someone who hated what he represented. She called for increased protection for heroes and harsher penalties for anyone targeting them. The skull became the story. Analysts debated its meaning. Experts on extremism were interviewed. The reward doubled to $100,000. But something else happened that Vaught hadn't anticipated. Someone leaked a video. It appeared on a forum known for hosting content the major platforms wouldn't touch. The video showed Flashbang in the Hoboken bar, drunk and aggressive, throwing the woman through the door before blowing out the windows. The timestamp matched the incident report Frank had found. The forum post included a message, "Hero." Within an hour, the video had been downloaded and re-uploaded across a dozen platforms. Vaught's scrubbing algorithms flagged it immediately, but the spread was faster than the takedown. By noon, the video had been viewed 2 million times. More videos surfaced. Other incidents, other heroes. Footage that had been buried or settled out of court. Someone was digging through Vaught's past and throwing it into the light. The PR team at Vaught went into overdrive. Statements, clarifications, context. They pushed narratives about edited footage and misinformation campaigns designed to undermine public trust. But the counter-narrative was growing. People who'd been paid to stay quiet started talking. Victims who'd signed NDAs risked legal action to tell their stories. The hashtag Not All Heroes trended for 6 hours before Vaught's social team managed to bury it under sponsored content. In a conference room on the 43rd floor of Vaught Tower, executives reviewed the damage. Metrics scrolled across screens, approval ratings, brand sentiment, market projections. The head of PR stood at the front of the room, hands clasped behind her back. "We're containing it, but the leak source is still active. Whoever has the Red Hook documents is using them strategically." How much did they get? The question came from a man in a charcoal suit at the head of the table. His voice carried the kind of authority that didn't need volume. 18 months of incident reports, cleanup authorizations, settlement records, enough to connect patterns we've spent years obscuring. And the individual responsible, still unidentified. But the method is consistent. Surgical strikes on soft targets, minimal exposure, maximum impact. She paused. He's not operating alone anymore. The man in the charcoal suit leaned back. "What makes you say that?" "The leaks are too coordinated, the timing too precise. He has help. Someone with technical capability and media access. Then find them. All of them." The man's tone didn't change. Still calm, still controlled. "And make sure the next headline isn't about us." The meeting ended. The executives filed out. The man in the charcoal suit remained staring at the skull image displayed on the screen. He pressed a button on the conference table. A line connected. "Yes, sir." The voice on the other end was crisp. "Get Homelander." "Don't." Frank sat in a different diner. Different borough, same routine. Coffee, news, waiting. The television showed the fallout. Vought scrambling. Public opinion fracturing. The videos spreading faster than the company could suppress them. He hadn't leaked the videos. That was someone else. Someone with access to platforms and distribution networks Frank didn't have. Butcher's people, probably. Frank's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Nice work. We should talk." Frank deleted the message, finished his coffee, left cash on the table. Outside, the city moved like it always did. People going to work, traffic piling up, nobody looking at the man in the worn jacket walking past them. Somewhere Vought was mobilizing. Somewhere they were planning a response. Frank had killed one of their heroes and turned him into a scandal. He'd proven that soups could bleed, that they could die, that the armor Vought built around them was thinner than advertised, and he'd done it in a way that made sure everyone was watching. The machine was turning its attention toward him now. All of it. Exactly as planned. He walked toward the subway, disappeared into the crowd. Behind him, the news kept rolling. The skull kept appearing. And Vought kept trying to control a narrative that was already slipping through their fingers. The address led to a basement in Brooklyn. Frank found it wedged between a laundromat and a bodega, accessible through a door that looked condemned but opened when he pushed. The stairs descended into darkness that smelled like old water and concrete. At the bottom, a single light bulb cast yellow illumination over a space that might have been a storage area once. Now it held mismatched furniture, a workbench covered in equipment, and 4 people who turned to face him when he entered. Butcher stood near the back wall, arms crossed. The same lean build, same eyes that measured threats like counting cards. Next to him, a younger man with nervous energy hands shoved in his pockets. A black man with the posture of someone who'd served broad-shouldered and watching Frank's hands. And a wiry guy near the workbench, surrounded by what looked like disassembled electronics and chemical containers. "Punctual?" Butcher said. "I like that." Frank didn't move past the stairs. "You sent the address. I came. Now talk." Butcher gestured to the others. "This is Huey Mother's Milk and Frenchie. We're the people Vought pretends don't exist. We kill soups, expose their shit, make life difficult for the bastards in the tower. And you want what from me? Partnership." Butcher stepped forward. "You've been busy. 3 dead in Red Hook flashbang bleeding out in a garage. Vaught's having a proper meltdown. But you're one man with a vendetta. We're a team with infrastructure. I don't do teams. You did. Marines, yeah." Butcher tilted his head. "Force recon if the way you move is any indication. So you know how this works. Lone wolf's good for a kill or 2, but you want to burn the whole house down. You need more hands." Frank looked at the others. Huey shifted his weight, uncomfortable with the scrutiny. Mother's Milk held still expression neutral. Frenchie smiled slightly, the kind of expression that said he'd seen worse things than Frank and found them interesting. "What's your end game?" Frank asked. "Homelander in the ground," Butcher said. "Vought scattered. Soups reminded they're not gods. Same as yours, I reckon. Then do it yourselves." "We would, but we're missing a piece." Butcher moved to the workbench, picking up a tablet. "You've got discipline, training. The kind of mindset that doesn't blink when things get messy. We've got intel resources and a list of targets longer than my patience. Together we accelerate the timeline. Frank studied the room again. The equipment on the bench wasn't civilian grade. Military surplus, maybe? Or stolen. The kind of gear that required connections and money. "You've been at this a while," Frank said. "Long enough to know what works and what doesn't." Butcher set the tablet down. "And what doesn't work is charging in without a plan. You got lucky with flashbang. Next time they'll be ready." "I don't need luck." "No, you need intelligence, target locations, movement patterns, Vaught's security rotations." Butcher leaned against the bench. "We've got all that. You've got the skills to use it." Huey spoke up, his voice less certain than Butcher's. "We're not asking you to change how you operate. Just work with us instead of around us. Share information. Coordinate." Frank looked at him. "You don't sound convinced." "I'm not," Huey said. "You killed 3 people in Red Hook who were just doing a job. But Butcher thinks you're useful, so here we are." "They weren't just doing a job," Frank said. "They were covering up murders. And you decided they deserved to die for it." "Yes." The word hung in the air. Huey's jaw tightened. Mother's Milk shifted slightly, his hand moving closer to his belt. Frenchie watched with the same small smile. Butcher stepped between them. "Easy. We're all on the same side here, even if we don't agree on the details." "Are we?" Frank asked. "You want Vaught gone. So do we. That's enough for now." Butcher pulled a folder from the workbench and held it out. "This is a list of facilities Vaught runs off the books. Black sites, research labs, places they do the work they can't explain to shareholders." Frank didn't take the folder. "Why give this to me?" "Because you'll actually do something with it. We've been gathering intel for months, but we're careful. Strategic. You're not." Butcher's smile returned. "You're a hammer looking for nails, and I've got a whole fucking toolbox to point you at." Frank took the folder, opened it. The first page showed an aerial photo of a university campus. Godolphin University, according to the label. The second page detailed a facility beneath the main building. Security rotations, access points. A note in the margin, "The Woods." "What is this?" Frank asked. "Vaught's dirty little secret," Butcher said. "They've been running experiments on soups, unauthorized testing, human trials that don't make it into the official records. Some of the subjects don't make it out." Frank flipped through more pages. Documentation, photos of underground corridors, a list of names with dates beside them. Most of the dates ended months or years ago. "You've known about this and done nothing." Frank's voice was colder now. "We've been planning," Butcher said. "Gathering evidence. Building a case that can't be buried. People are dying while you plan. People die every day." Butcher's tone didn't change. "We hit this place wrong. Vaught buries it deeper and we lose everything. We hit it right, we expose them in a way they can't spin." Frank closed the folder. "What do you want from me? Help us raid it. Get the evidence out. Make sure the world sees what's inside." Butcher paused. "And if some soups happen to die in the process, well, that's just good planning." Mother's Milk spoke for the first time, his voice low and deliberate. "This isn't a revenge mission. We go in, we get what we need, we get out. Clean." "Clean doesn't exist in this work," Frank said. "Maybe not. But controlled does." Mother's Milk stepped forward. "Butcher's right that you're good at what you do. But if you come with us, you follow the plan. We're not babysitting a one-man war." Frank looked at him. I don't need a babysitter. Then prove it. Work with us like a professional, not a psychopath with a gun. The air tightened. Frenchie's smile faded. Huey took a step back. Butcher watched, waiting. Frank set the folder on the bench. I work alone. You want to share intel, fine. But I don't take orders, and I don't compromise. Not asking you to compromise, Butcher said. Just asking you to aim at the same targets we are. And when our targets don't line up, then we have a conversation like adults. Butcher picked up the folder and held it out again. But right now our targets are the same. So take this, look it over, and decide if you want to hit Godolkin with us, or keep playing solo until Vought drops a soup on your head. Frank took the folder. When? 3 days. Gives you time to scout and us time to finalize logistics. Butcher pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed Frank the screen. A phone number. You have questions, you call that. You're in, you call that. You change your mind, throw the folder in a fire, and we never met. Frank memorized the number. Didn't save it. Turned toward the stairs. Castle. He stopped, looked back. Butcher's expression was serious now. You're good at killing. Maybe better than anyone I've met. But killing isn't the same as winning. You want to actually hurt Vought, you need more than a body count. I'll keep that in mind. Frank climbed the stairs. Behind him the voices started up again, quieter now, but tense. Huey saying something about trust. Mother's milk responding in a tone that suggested disagreement. Frenchie laughing softly. Outside the street was bright and normal. People walking past, cars honking, the world moving like it always did. Frank walked 4 blocks before stopping in an alley. He opened the folder again, reading through the details. The woods was real. The experiments were real. Vought had buried it under layers of bureaucracy and security, but it was there. He pulled out his phone, dialed the number Butcher had shown him. 2 rings. Then, yeah, I'm in, Frank said. But we do this my way. A pause. Then Butcher's voice, amused. We'll see about that. The line went dead. Frank put the phone away and kept walking. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to decide how much he trusted people who killed soups for a living, but still wanted to do it clean. Trust wasn't the right word. He didn't trust them, but he could use them. And if they could use him to get at Vaught's infrastructure, then the partnership worked. For now. Behind him, the city moved on. Above him, somewhere in the sky, the soups flew and posed and pretended to be gods. Soon, Frank thought. Soon they'd learn what happened when gods came down to earth. They bled, they broke, they died. Just like everyone else. The safe house was a 4th-floor walk-up in Union City. 2 rooms, no heat windows that faced an alley instead of the street. Frank had rented it under a dead man's name 3 weeks ago, paid 6 months in advance with cash, and never stayed longer than 4 hours at a time. He was packing the last of his equipment when he heard it. Not footsteps. Not the creak of the building settling. Something else. A displacement of air. The sound pressure changing in a way that meant someone was close. Frank's hand moved to the pistol on the table. He didn't pick it up. Not yet. The window exploded inward. Glass sprayed across the room as a figure in blue crashed through cape-billowing boots, hitting the floor with enough force to crack the old wood. The air smelled like ozone and something metallic. Power. Heat. Homelander stood in the center of the room, brushing glass off his shoulders. His smile was bright. Perfect. the kind that appeared on billboards and cereal boxes. "Frank Castle," he said. His voice carried the smooth confidence of someone who'd never been told no. The Punisher, the Skull, the guy who thinks he can wage war on Vought with a spray can and a grudge. Frank didn't move. His hand stayed near the gun, but taking it now would be suicide. Homelander could cross the room faster than Frank could aim. "I've been looking for you," Homelander continued. He walked to the table, picked up one of Frank's knives, examined it like a curious child. "You know, it's funny. Everyone's terrified of you. This mysterious killer taking out soups and humiliating the company. But here you are, just a man. Not even a big one." "You found me," Frank said. "Make your point." Homelander's smile widened. "My point is, you're annoying. Vaught's scrambling the PR department's having panic attacks, and I have to hear about it every single day. So I thought I'd come introduce myself. Show you what happens when you piss off the wrong people." He tossed the knife aside. It embedded in the wall, quivering. "You killed Flashbang," Homelander said. "Weak as he was still one of ours. That's a problem. Then you stole files, leaked videos, made us look bad. That's an even bigger problem." "Your reputation isn't my concern," Homelander laughed. The sound was genuine, almost friendly. "See, that's where you're wrong. Everything is your concern now. Because I'm here, and when I'm here, people pay attention." He moved closer. Frank held his ground. Running wouldn't help. Neither would fighting. Not yet. "You know what I love about this?" Homelander gestured around the room. "You tried to hide. You thought if you kept moving, stayed off grid, used cash and fake names, I wouldn't find you. But I can hear your heartbeat from 3 blocks away. I can see through walls. You can't hide from me, Frank. Nobody can. Then why wait until now?" Homelander's expression shifted. Still smiling, but colder now. "Because it's fun watching you think you're getting away with it. Watching you plan and scheme and act like you matter. But the truth is, I could end you right now. Snap your neck. Burn you to ash. And nobody would stop me." Frank met his eyes. "Then do it." The silence stretched. Homelander's smile faded, replaced by something calculating. He tilted his head, studying Frank like a puzzle that didn't solve correctly. "You're not scared?" Homelander said. It wasn't a question. "No." "You should be." "Probably." Homelander's eyes flared red. Not a full blast, just a flicker, a warning. The heat washed over Frank's face close enough to singe. "I could kill you," Homelander said quietly. "Right here, right now, and nobody would care. You're nobody, a terrorist, a murderer. The world would thank me." "Then what's stopping you?" Homelander's eyes dimmed. He stepped back, the smile returning. "Because killing you quick would be boring. I want you to know what's coming. I want you to feel it. Every step, every mistake, every friend you think you have turning into another body." He walked toward the broken window glass, crunching under his boots. Paused at the frame and looked back. "I'm going to make you famous, Frank. Not the way you want. Not as some vigilante hero. As an example. The guy who thought he could fight gods and learned the hard way he's still just meat." Homelander lifted off, hovering outside the window. The cape snapped in the wind. His silhouette against the city lights looked like every propaganda poster Vought had ever printed. "Enjoy the next few days," he said. "They're the last ones where you still think you can win." He flew away. The sonic boom rattled what was left of the window frame. Frank stood in the wreckage, adrenaline finally catching up to his nervous system. His hands were steady, his breathing controlled. But his mind was cataloging the encounter, analyzing every detail. Homelander had found him. That meant the safe house was burned. But more than that, it meant Vought had upgraded their search parameters. The cache and fake names weren't enough anymore. Frank pulled out his phone, dialed the number Butcher had given him. "Yeah. We have a problem," Frank said. 20 minutes later, he was in the back of a van heading toward New Jersey. Frenchie drove, humming something tuneless. Huey sat in the passenger seat, glancing back at Frank every few seconds, like he expected him to vanish. "Homelander came to your safe house?" Huey's voice cracked slightly. "He just showed up?" "Yes." "And you're still alive?" "Obviously." Frenchie laughed from the driver's seat. "Mon ami, you have luck, or maybe Homelander has a sense of drama. Either way, you should not go back there." "I wasn't planning to." Huey turned fully in his seat. "How did he find you?" "We've been running from him for months, and he's never gotten this close." "Son, he said he could hear my heartbeat from blocks away," Frank said. "See through walls?" "Thermal imaging, maybe," Huey said. "Or he's tracking something else. A phone, credit cards." "I don't use either." Frenchie glanced in the rearview mirror. "Then he is hunting you the old way. Patrol patterns, searching districts, listening. He has time, yes. And you stay in one place too long." Frank didn't respond. Frenchie was right. He'd stayed in Union City longer than usual, preparing for the Godalkin raid. Homelander must have narrowed the search grid and started sweeping. The van pulled into an industrial park outside Newark. Abandoned warehouses lined the road, their windows dark. Frenchie parked behind one of the larger buildings and killed the engine. "This is ours," Huey said. "Off the books. Butcher set it up 6 months ago. Homelander doesn't know about it." "You sure?" "Sure enough. We've used it for storage and planning. No one's ever traced us here." They climbed out. The warehouse was cold and smelled like rust. Inside, Butcher and Mother's Milk were waiting near a table covered in maps and equipment. Butcher looked up when Frank entered. "Heard you met the Golden Boy." He made his point, which was that he can find me whenever he wants. That he's letting me run until he decides to stop. Butcher grunted. "Sounds like Homelander. Arrogant prick loves his drama." He gestured to the table. "But he's not wrong. You're exposed now. He knows you're active in the tri-state area. That narrows his search. Next time he won't talk. He'll just kill you." "Let him try." Mother's Milk shook his head. "You don't get it. You can't fight him. Not as you are. He's faster, stronger, and damn near invincible. You go toe-to-toe, you lose. I'm not planning to fight him." "Then what's your plan?" Mother's Milk asked. "Because running only works until it doesn't." Frank moved to the table, studying the maps. "He said he could hear my heartbeat. See through walls." "That's useful information." "How?" Huey asked. "Because it means he's tracking me by proximity. He has to be close enough to use his senses. If I stay mobile, keep changing locations, I make his search area too large to cover efficiently." Butcher leaned against the table. "That'll work for a bit. But he's got patience when he wants it. And Vought's got resources. They'll flood the area with surveillance, facial recognition, drones. Every camera in the city will be looking for you." "Then I don't use my face," Frank said. He pointed to one of the boxes stacked against the wall. "You said you had equipment." Frenchie perked up. "Oh yes. What do you need?" "Zinc plating, enough to line a jacket or vest. Something that blocks X-ray vision." Huey blinked. Wait, that actually works. Translucent, Butcher said. One of the 7 until he wasn't. Homelander couldn't see through zinc. It's the one blind spot in his vision. Then get me zinc, Frank said. And anything else that disrupts thermal tracking. Heat diffusers, reflective lining. Frenchie grinned. This I can do. Give me 2 days. You have one, Frank said. The grin faded. 1 day is difficult. Then work faster. Mother's Milk crossed his arms. Even if you block his vision, he's still got hearing. You can't hide your heartbeat. No, Frank agreed. But I can mask it. White noise generators, audio decoys. Enough ambient sound to bury my signature. Butcher studied him. You've thought this through. I had 20 minutes in the van. And you think this'll keep Homelander off you? No, Frank said. But it'll slow him down, make him work for it. And while he's searching, I'm moving. Huey looked between them. What about the Godolkin raid? Are we still doing that? Yes, Frank said. With Homelander actively hunting you. Especially because of that. Frank turned to Butcher. He said he wants to make an example of me. That means he's waiting for a moment with maximum impact. Public. Visible. Somewhere the world can watch. So we hit Godolkin before he sets the stage. We pull Vought's focus in multiple directions, make them react instead of plan. Butcher's smile returned. You want to piss him off even more? I want him angry. Angry people make mistakes. Mother's Milk shook his head again, but he didn't argue. You're either crazy or you've got a death wish. Maybe both, Frank said. But right now, Homelander thinks he's in control. He thinks I'm scared. That I'll run until he's ready to catch me. And you're not running, Huey said quietly. I'm moving forward. There's a difference. The room fell silent. Frenchie nodded slowly, already calculating what he'd need for the zinc lining. Huey looked uncomfortable, but didn't protest. Mother's Milk exchanged a glance with Butcher, some unspoken communication passing between them. Butcher pushed off from the table. All right. Frenchie gets you your gear. We finalized the Godolkin plan. And you stay here until we're ready to move. I don't stay anywhere. You do now. Homelander's looking for a lone wolf moving through the city. He's not looking for someone sitting still in a warehouse he doesn't know exists. Butcher pointed to a corner where sleeping bags and supplies were stacked. So sit, rest, and let us handle the logistics for once. Frank considered arguing. Didn't. Butcher was right. Homelander expected him to run. Staying put was the last thing the soup pea would anticipate. Fine, Frank said. 1 day, then we move. 1 day. Butcher agreed. Frank walked to the corner and dropped his pack. The warehouse was cold. The floor concrete, the ceiling high enough that every sound echoed. Not comfortable. But comfort wasn't the priority. Survival was. And survival meant adapting, using every advantage. Turning Homelander's arrogance into a weakness. Zinc would block the X-ray vision. Noise would mask the heartbeat. Mobility would frustrate the search. But eventually Homelander would find him again. That was inevitable. When that happened, Frank needed to be ready. Not to fight, not to run. To make the soup's victory so public, so messy, so impossible to spin that Vought couldn't bury it. Homelander wanted to make an example of Frank. Frank would return the favor. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. 1 day to prepare. 1 day before the raid. And after that, the war escalated. Good. Godolkin University looked like every other campus at 2 in the morning. Empty quads, dark buildings, security lights casting long shadows across walkways designed for students who weren't there. Frank crouched on a rooftop, 300 yards from the main administration building, watching the patrol patterns through binoculars. 2 guards circled the perimeter every 12 minutes. Standard rent-a-cop quality. Flashlights, radios, no weapons visible. The real security was underground. Butcher's intel had mapped the woods in detail. Subterranean facility accessed through a service elevator in the building's basement. Biometric locks, armed response team, surveillance covering every corridor. The kind of setup that cost millions and existed on no public record. Frank lowered the binoculars. Beside him, Butcher checked his watch. "Frenchie's got 5 minutes to kill the power," Butcher said. "After that, we're on battery backup and the window closes." "He'll make it?" "Your confidence is touching." 2 blocks away, Frenchie was positioned near a transformer station with enough explosives to black out 6 city blocks. The plan called for precision. Enough damage to cut primary power to Godolkin without taking down the surrounding neighborhood. Enough chaos to pull the guards' attention while Frank and Butcher entered through the compromised access point Huey had identified. Mother's Milk was running Overwatch from a van parked near the campus perimeter. Huey was with him monitoring police bands and Vaught's private security channels. Frank's radio crackled. Huey's voice tense. "We've got a problem. Vaught's moving a transport through the area. ETA 4 minutes. Butcher cursed under his breath. "What kind of transport?" "Armored truck. 3 vehicles. Looks like a supply run, but the route goes right past campus. Can we delay them?" "Not without tipping our hand." Frank scanned the street below. 4 minutes meant the transport would arrive during the window when they'd be most exposed. Frenchie's explosion would draw attention. Guards would respond, and Vaught's people would see the chaos and investigate. "We proceed," Frank said. Butcher looked at him. "You heard the man. 4 minutes, and we've got Vaught breathing down our necks. Then we move faster." Butcher's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Keyed his radio. "Frenchie, we're compressed. Blow it on my mark and make it count." "We. Ready when you are." Butcher checked his watch again. 30 seconds. He pulled a balaclava over his face. Frank did the same, the zinc-lined fabric heavy against his skin. Frenchie had delivered. The vest underneath was plated with enough zinc sheeting to block X-ray vision, and the jacket's lining dispersed thermal signatures. Not perfect, but enough. "Mark," Butcher said. The explosion lit up the night 2 blocks east. Not loud, controlled, but the lights across campus died instantly, plunging the quad into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in 3 seconds later, but the main grid was down. Frank and Butcher moved. They dropped from the rooftop onto a lower section, then down a fire escape to ground level. The campus guards were already running toward the explosion radios, squawking. Frank and Butcher cut across the quad in the opposite direction, staying low using the emergency light's blind spots. The administration building's side entrance was locked. Huey had sent the bypass codes 2 hours ago. Butcher punched them in. The lock clicked green. Inside the hallways were dim. Battery-powered strips along the baseboards provided minimal illumination. They moved to the stairwell, descending 3 flights to the basement level. The service elevator sat behind a maintenance door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Butcher knelt beside the biometric scanner, pulling a device from his pack. Huey's work. A scanner cloner loaded with fingerprints lifted from a janitor's locker 2 days prior. The device beeped. The elevator doors slid open. They stepped inside. The elevator descended smoothly, no sound except the hum of the motor. Frank counted the seconds. 20, 30, 40. The doors opened onto a corridor that didn't match the building above. White walls, LED lighting, air filtration systems humming in the ceiling. Clinical, sterile, wrong. Frank's radio crackled. Mother's Milk's voice urgent. Transport just pulled onto campus. They're not stopping. Headed straight for admin. How long? Butcher asked. 2 minutes, maybe less. Butcher swore again. We need to move, find the records room, and get out. They advanced down the corridor. Cameras dotted the ceiling, but Huey had looped the feeds 10 minutes ago. The live monitors upstairs would show empty hallways while Frank and Butcher walked beneath them. The first door they passed was labeled Subject Observation. Frank glanced through the reinforced window. A room beyond medical equipment, a bed with restraints. Empty now. But the walls had scorch marks. Recent. Butcher kept moving. Save the moral inventory for later. We're here for documents. The corridor branched. Left led toward what looked like medical facilities. Right toward administrative offices. Butcher went right. Frank followed. The records room was marked with a placard that read, Archives, authorized access only. Butcher tried the door. Locked. He pulled a small charge from his pack, molded it around the handle, and stepped back. The explosion was sharp, concussive. The handle blew inward and the door swung open. Inside, rows of filing cabinets lined the walls. A desk with a computer terminal sat in the corner. Butcher went for the terminal. Frank started on the cabinets. The files were organized by date and subject number. No names, just alphanumeric codes. Frank pulled folders at random, scanning contents. Medical records, test results, incident reports detailing power manifestations and control failures, photos of subjects in restraints in observation rooms and body bags. He found a folder marked Termination Protocols. Inside, a list of subjects who'd been discontinued. The clinical language didn't hide what it meant. Killed, disposed of, erased. Butcher's fingers flew across the keyboard. Huey, I'm in the system. Downloading everything. How long do I have? Transport's at the building. They're unloading. Looks like they're bringing something inside. How many personnel? 6. Armed. And they've got... Huey's voice cut off. Huey. Butcher's hands stopped. Static. Then, Mother's Milk. He's here. The transport wasn't supplies. They brought a soup. Frank moved to the doorway, looking down the corridor. Nothing yet. But he could hear it now. Footsteps. Heavy. Multiple. How long for the download? Frank asked. 3 minutes. We don't have 3 minutes. Then we make time. Butcher kept typing. Frank pulled his rifle from its sling, checked the chamber. The zinc vest would block Homelander's vision if he showed up, but it wouldn't stop a soup with different powers. The footsteps grew louder. Voices now. Someone shouting orders. Frank stepped into the corridor, raised the rifle, waited. The first guard rounded the corner 20 yards away. Tactical gear, submachine gun. He saw Frank and started to raise his weapon. Frank fired twice. Center mass. The guard dropped. The corridor erupted. More guards poured around the corner, returning fire. Rounds sparked off the walls. Frank ducked back into the records room as bullets chewed through the doorframe. Butcher didn't look up from the terminal. Bit busy here, mate. Frank leaned out, fired 3 controlled bursts, dropped 2 more guards. The rest scattered, taking cover in doorways and alcoves. Then the soup arrived. He came around the corner, fast low, to the ground, moving with inhuman speed, skin like gray stone, eyes that glowed faint orange. Frank recognized the type from Butcher's briefings. Durability class, enhanced strength, minimal ranged capability. The soup charged. Frank aimed for the face, the only spot not covered in stone-like hide, and fired. The round sparked off. Too tough. The soup closed the distance, swung a fist the size of a bowling ball. Frank rolled left, felt the impact crater the wall behind him. Plaster exploded. Rebar showed through. Butcher finally looked up. Shit. Basalt. He's one of theirs. Frank didn't waste time asking questions. He pulled a flashbang from his vest, yanked the pin, and threw it directly at the soupy's face. The device detonated on contact. Light and sound compressed into a sphere that would have dropped a normal person instantly. Basalt stumbled. Didn't fall. But he was disoriented. Frank moved in, drew his knife. The soupy's eyes were vulnerable. Had to be. He drove the blade up under Basalt's jaw, angling toward the brain. The resistance was immediate, thick. But the knife punched through. Basalt screamed, grabbed Frank by the vest, and threw him. Frank hit the wall hard enough to crack ribs, dropped to the floor, tasted blood. Basalt staggered, the knife still embedded in his throat. He reached for it, trying to pull it free, but the angle was wrong. His hands scrabbled uselessly. Frank forced himself up, drew his sidearm, walked forward and put 4 rounds through Basalt's left eye socket. The soup collapsed. Didn't get up. Butcher yanked the USB drive from the terminal. We're done. Move. Frank grabbed 2 armfuls of folders from the cabinets. Patient records, termination protocols, incident reports. He shoved them into his pack as Butcher ran past into the corridor. The guards were regrouping. Frank could hear them coordinating, calling for backup. The mission was blown, but they had what they came for. They ran back toward the elevator. Butcher hit the button. Nothing happened. Emergency lockdown, Butcher said. They've cut the lifts. Stairs. This deep not mapped. Frank looked down the corridor. The guards would be here in seconds. No elevator, no exit. His radio crackled. Frenchie's voice. There is maintenance shaft. North wall should lead to surface. I am sending coordinates now. Butcher checked his phone. 40 meters, through the medical wing. They ran. Behind them, voices shouted. Footsteps pounded. A gunshot cracked and the round whined past Frank's ear. The medical wing was a maze of observation rooms and surgical theaters. They cut through, knocking over equipment, slamming doors. Frank's ribs screamed with every breath. The maintenance shaft was exactly where Frenchie said. A circular access hatch in the floor secured with a simple bolt lock. Butcher wrenched it open. Below, a ladder descended into darkness. You first, Butcher said. Frank dropped through. His boots hit rungs slick with condensation. He climbed down, Butcher following above. The shaft was narrow, claustrophobic. The air smelled like mold and rust. 30 feet down, the shaft opened into a horizontal tunnel. Storm drain, maybe, or old utility access. Frank didn't care. He moved forward, Butcher right behind. The tunnel stretched 200 yards before terminating at a grate, beyond the street. Frank kicked the grate once, twice. It broke free. They crawled out into an alley 3 blocks from campus. Mother's Milk was waiting in the van, engine running. They climbed in. The van peeled out before the doors closed. Huey turned from the passenger seat, his face pale. Did you get it? Butcher held up the USB drive. Everything. Patient logs, experiments, terminations, all of it. And the folders. Huey looked at Frank's pack. Frank pulled one out, opened it. Inside, a photo of a young woman strapped to a table, electrodes attached to her temples. The report beneath detailed a failed attempt to amplify her abilities. Subject expired during trial 4. Cause of death, cardiac arrest induced by overstimulation. Huey looked away. Mother's milk drove in silence. Butcher stared at the USB drive like it might explode. "We lost someone," Frank said. Butcher nodded. "Frenchie's still at the transformer station. He'll extract separately. Safer that way." "Not him." Butcher looked up. "What? Basalt. He didn't show up by accident. Someone tipped Vought." The van went quiet. Mother's Milk's knuckles whitened on the wheel. Huey's breath caught. "You're saying we've got a leak," Butcher said slowly. "I'm saying someone knew we were coming." Butcher's jaw clenched. "If that's true, then we've got a bigger problem than Homelander." Frank leaned back, pressing a hand to his ribs. The pain was sharp. Probably cracked. Maybe broken. But they had the evidence. The woods was real. The experiments were documented. Vought had killed people and called it research. Now the world would know, if they lived long enough to show them. The video dropped at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. Not on YouTube or Twitter. Those platforms had algorithms, moderation teams, legal departments that responded to Vaught's takedown requests within minutes. This went to the dark corners first. Forums where content lived longer. Encrypted channels. Places where deletion required more effort than Vought usually bothered with. The footage was raw, unedited. Security camera angles from the woods showing examination rooms, restraint tables, subjects convulsing during procedures, timestamps, dates, subject numbers that matched the patient records leaked simultaneously as PDF files. By 7 a.m., it had spread to mainstream platforms, re-uploaded faster than Vought could scrub it. Each takedown spawned 3 more copies. The algorithms designed to protect the company's image couldn't keep pace with human anger. By 8 a.m., major news outlets were covering the leak itself, carefully avoiding showing the actual footage while describing its contents. Vought released a statement within the hour. The company denied all allegations. The footage was fabricated. Deepfakes created by sophisticated actors with anti-soup agendas. The documents were forgeries. Vought would pursue legal action against anyone distributing this malicious content. The statement included quotes from respected scientists explaining how easy modern technology made it to fake video evidence. Expert testimony about the dangers of believing unverified claims. A reminder that Vought had always operated with the highest ethical standards subject to rigorous oversight. The statement was professional, polished, completely inadequate. Because 3 hours after the video dropped, a former Godolkin student came forward. Her name was redacted in the interview, her face blurred, but her voice was clear. She described the woods, the medical experiments, the students who disappeared and never came back. She had documentation, emails from university administrators, medical records showing treatments she never consented to, scars she showed to the camera. Vaught's second statement was sharper. The woman was troubled. A known fabricator with a history of mental health issues. She'd been expelled from Godolkin for disciplinary reasons and harbored resentment. Her claims were part of a coordinated smear campaign designed to damage Vaught's reputation during a critical period of expansion. But by then, 2 more witnesses had surfaced. Then 5. Then 12. The news cycle caught fire. Investigative journalists started pulling threads. Alumni groups formed online sharing stories that had been buried under NDAs and settlement agreements. Lawyers who'd handled Vought cases began receiving subpoenas from congressional committees that had been looking for an excuse to investigate the company for months. Vought's stock dropped 8% in a single day. In a conference room on the 43rd floor of Vought Tower, executives watched the damage accumulate across multiple screens. Share price, social media sentiment, news coverage broken down by network and demographic. Every metric trending in the wrong direction. The woman at the head of the table was in her 50s gray suit expression carved from ice. Madeline Stillwell's replacement, though nobody used that comparison out loud anymore. She'd rebuilt Vaught's image twice already. The Stormfront incident. The Maeve defection. Each time she'd found the narrative thread and pulled until the story unraveled the way the company needed. This was different. "How much of it's verified?" she asked. A junior analyst spoke up, tablet in hand. "Approximately 60% of the leaked documents match internal records we've confirmed. The rest were still cross-referencing, but the metadata is consistent. Someone had access to our actual archives. The Woods facility, locked down. We've initiated full protocol. All research suspended. Documents transferred to secure servers. The physical sites being sanitized. And the witnesses, legitimate. We've identified 7 who were actually enrolled at Godolphin during the relevant period. Their medical records confirm they participated in trials." The woman's expression didn't change. "How many of them signed ND as all of them? Then bury them in litigation. Send a message that breaking those agreements has consequences." A man across the table cleared his throat. Legal counsel, judging by the 3 binders stacked in front of him. "That strategy carries significant risk. Public sympathy is already against us. Going after victims makes us look predatory." "We are predatory," the woman said. "The question is whether we're competent. Right now we look like amateurs who got caught." "The footage is the bigger problem," another executive interjected. "We can discredit witnesses. We can't discredit our own security cameras." "We can if we claim they were hacked and manipulated. Plant enough doubt and reasonable people will question everything." "And the unreasonable ones?" The woman smiled. Thin, professional. "We give them something else to be unreasonable about." She pressed a button on the table. A screen behind her switched to live footage from a protest outside Vought Tower. 200 people, maybe more. Signs demanding accountability. Justice for victims. Several held printouts of the skull symbol spray-painted or drawn in marker. "The Punishers become a symbol," she said. "The voice of righteous anger against corporate evil. We can't kill a symbol with lawsuits. We kill it by making it ugly." "How?" the legal counsel asked. "Link him to the leak. Frame this as terrorism, not activism. Show that his methods endanger innocent people. Make him the villain and his supporters become villain adjacent." "We don't know if he was involved in the leak." "We know someone was. And he's already claimed responsibility for killing our people and stealing from our facilities. The public connection writes itself." A younger executive leaned forward. "What about the medical evidence? We can spin witnesses and footage, but the patient records show patterns, repeated trials, high mortality rates. That's harder to dismiss." The woman nodded. "Which is why we don't dismiss it. We acknowledge mistakes were made. Rogue researchers operating outside approved protocols. Godolphin's administration failed in oversight. We're horrified. We're cooperating with authorities, and we're implementing sweeping reforms to ensure nothing like this happens again." "Throw Godolphin under the bus," the legal counsel said. "Throw the parts we can afford to lose. Preserve the brand. Vought survives by adaptation, not defense." The room absorbed this. No objections, no moral hesitation, just the cold calculus of damage control. "What about Homelander?" someone asked. The woman's smile faded. "What about him? He's been vocal about wanting to handle the Punisher personally. If we shift strategy, he needs to be briefed. Homelander doesn't need briefings. He needs targets." She stood collecting her tablet. "Get me a location on Frank Castle. Current actionable intelligence. If he's working with others, I want names. If he's operating alone, I want his next move predicted." "That's difficult without." "Then make it easy. Use every resource we have. Surveillance, informants, data analysis. I don't care if you have to put a bounty on every burner phone in the tri-state area. Find him." The meeting ended. Executives filed out, already pulling phones and making calls. The woman remained staring at the protest footage. Her assistant approached hesitant. "There's another issue?" "Of course there is. The skulls appearing in other cities, graffiti, posters, social media profiles. People are adopting it as a resistance symbol." The woman turned. "Show me." The assistant pulled up a compilation. Dozens of images. Skulls spray-painted on Vought's storefronts, printed on shirts at protests, used as avatars by accounts calling for the company's dissolution. In some cities, local supers had found the symbol painted on their homes, their cars, the places they worked. "It's viral," the assistant said. "We can take down posts, but we can't stop people from drawing it." The woman stared at the screen. The skull stared back. White on black, simple, effective. A declaration that someone was watching, someone was fighting, someone refused to accept Vought's version of reality. "Then we make it radioactive," she said. "Associate it with violence, extremism. Make wearing that symbol socially unacceptable." "How?" "Stage an incident. Something bloody enough to horrify moderates, something we can trace back to Punisher sympathizers." The assistant's face went pale. "You're suggesting a false flag." "I'm suggesting we protect our interests. If that requires creating a narrative where the skull represents danger instead of resistance, then that's what we do." She turned back to the window. "Arrange a meeting with our field operatives, the ones who understand discretion." The assistant hesitated. "Ma'am, if this goes wrong..." "It won't. Because we'll control every variable." The woman's reflection in the glass showed no emotion. "Vought didn't build an empire by playing fair. We built it by winning, and we're not about to lose to one man with a grudge and a can of paint." Frank watched the news coverage from a motel room in Pennsylvania. 3 states away from New York. Different name, different vehicle. The room smelled like cigarettes and bleach, but it had a television and distance from Vought's search grid. The leak was working. Not perfectly. Vought's PR machine was already spinning, already planting doubt, already shifting blame. But the cracks were visible. Witnesses coming forward. Journalists asking questions. Protests growing. His phone buzzed. Butcher's number. "You watching this?" Butcher asked. "Yeah. It's a start. But they're going to hit back. Probably hard. Let them. That's not a strategy, mate. That's suicide." Butcher paused. "We need to stay ahead. Keep the pressure on. Hit another target before they regroup." "What target?" "I'm working on it. But you need to stay out of sight. Vought's going to make you the villain in this. Paint you as a terrorist who endangers civilians. Turn your symbol into something people fear instead of rally behind." "They can try. They will. And they're good at it." Butcher's tone shifted. You did the right thing with the woods. We got evidence. We exposed them. But now comes the hard part. Surviving the backlash. Frank ended the call. Set the phone on the nightstand. On the television, a new segment started. Analysis about domestic terrorism and the rise of anti-corporate extremism. The skull appeared on screen labeled as a hate symbol. Experts discussed the dangers of vigilantism. The anchor asked whether society could afford to let individuals take justice into their own hands. Frank turned off the television, lay back on the bed. His ribs ached. The bruises from Basalt's throw had bloomed across his torso in shades of purple and black. Outside, traffic hummed past on the highway. Normal people going to normal jobs, living normal lives in a world that told them heroes were real. And companies like Vought kept them safe. Frank had pulled back the curtain, shown them the machinery underneath, the experiments, the deaths, the corporate language that turned murder into acceptable losses. Some would believe it. Most wouldn't. But enough would. Enough to matter. Vought could spin the narrative. They could threaten witnesses and flood the media with counter-stories. They could make Frank the monster. None of it changed the truth. The woods had existed. People had died there. Vought had buried it. And now, no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't bury it again. Frank closed his eyes, let the pain in his ribs settle into a dull throb. Tomorrow Vought would escalate. They'd tighten the noose, send Homelander or another soup to end this permanently. Tomorrow Frank would be ready. Tonight he'd let the world argue about what justice looked like. Because soon, they'd see it firsthand. The convoy left Vought Tower at 2 a.m. 3 vehicles. Armored transport in the center, flanked by SUVs with tinted windows. No markings, no lights. The kind of operation designed to move valuable cargo without drawing attention. Butcher's intel called it a supply run. Medical compounds transferred from Vaught's primary research facility to a secondary site in Connecticut. Routine logistics. Happened twice a month on rotating schedules. This shipment was different. Huey had intercepted encrypted communications referencing V-24. Temperature-controlled transport. Extreme handling protocols. The kind of language that appeared when Vought moved something they couldn't afford to lose. Frank watched the convoy from a rooftop in Hell's Kitchen. 3 a.m. now. The vehicles were stopped at a red light, fourth one in 6 blocks. Traffic patterns this time of night were predictable. Long stretches of empty road interrupted by clusters of signals designed to regulate flow during rush hour, but mostly useless now. His radio crackled. Mother's Milk's voice. Next light's our window. 45 seconds after it turns red, the intersection clears. That's when Frenchie moves. Frank scanned the street below. 2 civilian cars waited at the light. Both would pass through before the convoy arrived. After that, empty asphalt for 3 blocks. Copy, Frank said. Butcher's voice cut in. Remember, we need the transport intact. V-24 is volatile. You crack it open wrong, we're looking at contamination or worse. Understood. The light changed. The civilian cars moved through. The convoy approached. Frank counted seconds. 30 yards from the intersection, Frenchie's panel van pulled out from a side street. Not fast, deliberate. The van positioned itself across both lanes, blocking the convoy's path. The lead SUV braked hard. Tires squealed. The transport stopped behind it. The rear SUV maintained distance professional spacing. Doors opened. 6 men emerged from the SUV's tactical gear. Submachine guns, They spread out, creating a perimeter around the transport. Frenchie climbed out of the van, hands raised. He wore a reflective vest and a concerned expression, started gesturing toward the van's hood, miming engine trouble. The lead guard approached, weapon lowered, but ready. "You need to move this vehicle, now." "It will not start," Frenchie said, accent thick. "I call for tow truck, yes, very sorry. Call from somewhere else. Move it by hand if you have to." Frenchie nodded enthusiastically, turned back toward the van. His hand went to his pocket. The guard's weapon came up. "Don't." Frenchie froze. "Is just phone. For tow truck. Show me. Slowly." Frenchie pulled out a phone, held it up. The guard relaxed slightly. Frank fired. The suppressed round took the guard in the chest. He dropped without a sound. The other guard spun, searching for the shooter. Frank was already moving, shifting position on the rooftop. 2 more shots. 2 more guards down. The remaining 3 opened fire. Rounds sparked off the rooftop ledge where Frank had been. He was 20 feet away now, prone, sighting through the scope. Frenchie dove behind the van, pulled a detonator from his actual pocket. Pressed the button. The shaped charges planted under the intersection went off. Not large, precise. The asphalt heaved upward in a line across both lanes, creating a barrier between the lead SUV and the transport. The guards scattered. One ran toward the van. Frank put him down. Another tried to circle around the debris. Frenchie leaned out and shot him twice with a pistol that appeared from inside his vest. The last guard reached for his radio. Frank's round caught him in the throat before he could transmit. Silence. 6 bodies. 40 seconds. Frank descended the fire escape, crossed the street. Frenchie was already at the transport's rear door, examining the lock. "Biometric bike," Frenchie said. "Fingerprint and retinal scan. Very secure." Frank dragged one of the guards to the door, pressed the dead man's thumb against the scanner, held up the head for the retinal scan. The lock beeped. Denied. "Needs living biometric signature," Frenchie said. "Pulse, blood pressure. They think of everything." Then we cut through. "No, I told you. V24 is sensitive. Temperature changes, vibration. We force this wrong container's rupture." Frank stepped back, looked at the transport, military-grade armor, reinforced doors, designed to withstand everything from small arms fire to improvised explosives. His radio crackled. Butcher's voice. "Police are responding to the gunfire. You've got 3 minutes before they arrive." Frank circled the transport, looking for weakness, finding none. Then he noticed the ventilation panel on the roof. Small, designed for climate control, not a security feature. He climbed onto the hood, then the roof. The panel was secured with 4 bolts. Frank pulled a multi-tool from his belt and started working. Frenchie appeared beside him. "This will take too long." "Got a better idea." Frenchie grinned. Pulled a small acetylene torch from his pack. "Always." The torch cut through the bolts in seconds. Frank pried the panel free. Below, a narrow shaft descended into the transport's interior. Temperature controlled. Sterile. Frank went in head first. The shaft was tight. His shoulders scraped the sides. He dropped 6 feet into the cargo area. The interior was exactly what Butcher's intel had described. Medical refrigeration units lining both walls. Digital displays showing temperature readings. A small workstation with a computer terminal. Frank moved to the nearest refrigeration unit. Opened it. Inside, racks of vials. Clear liquid. Labels marked with alphanumeric codes and a Vought logo. He pulled out his phone, took photos of the labels. The storage configuration, the control systems. Then he started loading vials into the insulated pack Frenchie had provided. 20 vials, 30, 40. His radio crackled. Mother's milk. Police are 2 blocks out. Time to go. Frank sealed the pack, climbed back up the shaft. Frenchie helped pull him out. They jumped down from the transport, ran to Frenchie's van. The vehicle's engine was running. Had been the whole time. The breakdown had been theater. They drove 3 blocks before ditching the van in an alley. A second vehicle waited. Mother's milk at the wheel. They climbed in. The car pulled into traffic speed, moderate, nothing suspicious. Behind them, sirens wailed. Police converged on the intersection, found the bodies, the transport, the damaged road. By the time they secured the scene, Frank and the others were across the river in New Jersey. The safe house was different this time. An apartment in Newark, 2nd floor. Windows facing an interior courtyard. Butcher was waiting when they arrived. Frank set the insulated pack on the table, opened it. The vials gleamed under the overhead light. Butcher picked one up, turned it slowly. This is it. Temp V. The thing that lets humans go toe-to-toe with soups for 24 hours. At what cost? Huey asked. He'd been quiet since they arrived. Butcher set the vial down. Brain lesions if you're unlucky. Death if you use it too much. Butcher's own diagnosis had been 12 to 18 months before his body gave out. He'd used it 3 times. How many times is too much? Mother's milk asked. Research notes say 3 to 5 doses can be fatal, Butcher said. But that's average. Some people tolerate it better, some worse. Frank picked up a vial, held it to the light. The liquid inside was perfectly clear, innocuous. It looked like saline, like something harmless. What's the plan? Mother's milk asked. Butcher looked at Frank. That depends. You willing to use this? Not yet. When there's no other option? Huey stepped forward. Using this makes you one of them. Temporarily, maybe, but still. You'd be a soup. I'd be equipped, Frank said. There's a difference. Is there? Huey's voice rose. We've spent months fighting against Compound V. Against everything it represents. Using it ourselves makes us hypocrites. It makes us survivors, Butcher said. Homelander's not going to play fair. Neither should we. That's not the same thing, and you know it. Huey turned to Mother's milk. Back me up here. Mother's milk looked at the vials, at Frank, at Butcher. I don't like it, but I understand why it's on the table. Of course you do. Huey's hands clenched. Everyone here's so focused on winning, they've forgotten what we're supposed to be fighting for. We're fighting to survive, Frank said quietly. Everything else is secondary. Not to me. The room went silent. Huey stared at Frank. Frank stared back. No anger in either expression. Just fundamental disagreement about what constituted acceptable cost. Butcher broke the tension. Nobody's using it today. We store it, keep it secure, and if the situation calls for it, we decide then. Who decides? Huey asked. The person willing to inject it. Butcher picked up the vials, started packing them back into the insulated container. Frank's right. This is a last resort. But last resorts exist for a reason. Mother's milk moved to the window, looked out at the courtyard. Vaught's going to notice the missing V-24. They'll tighten security, escalate. Good, Frank said. Good. They're reacting. That means we're controlling the pace, or they're about to drop the hammer. Mother's milk turned back. The woods leak the convoy hit. We're forcing them into a corner. Cornered animals get dangerous. So do cornered people, Frank said. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered, no voice, just breathing. Then a click. The line went dead. Frank stared at the screen. What? Butcher asked. Wrong number. But it wasn't. Frank knew the pattern. The breathing, the silence. Someone was sending a message. Someone who wanted him to know they were watching. He pocketed the phone. We need to relocate. Now. Why? Because they know where we are. Butcher's expression hardened. How? Doesn't matter. We move. They packed in silence. Weapons, equipment, the V-24, everything loaded into bags and carried to the car. Mother's milk drove. Frenchie rode shotgun. Butcher and Frank in the back watching the streets. Huey stayed behind for 30 seconds, checking corners, making sure nothing was left. When he climbed into the car, his face was pale. There's a van across the street, windows tinted, engine running. How long? Butcher asked. Don't know. Wasn't there when we arrived. Mother's milk pulled into traffic. The van followed, stayed back. Professional distance. We've got a tail, Mother's milk said. Butcher looked at Frank. Your leak theory's looking better. Frank didn't respond. He was watching the van in the side mirror, trying to see through the tinted windows, failing. They drove for 20 minutes. The van stayed with them, never closing, never falling back, just maintaining distance. Then Huey's phone rang. He looked at the screen, frowned, answered. Hello? His face went white. He held the phone away from his ear, put it on speaker. A voice filled the car, smooth, confident, familiar, Homelander. Hi, fellas. Just wanted to let you know I'm watching, all of you. Frank, Billy, the whole merry band. You've been busy. Impressive, really. But it ends soon. Butcher grabbed the phone. How'd you get this number? Does it matter? I've got all your numbers, all your safe houses, all your pathetic little plans. Homelander's voice carried amusement. You really thought you could steal from us and walk away. We've walked away before. Not this time. See, Frank made this personal when he painted his little skull everywhere. And I don't like people making things personal. Frank leaned forward. Then come find me. A pause. Then laughter. Oh, I will. But not yet. First, I want you to know what's coming. I want you to have time to think about it. To understand that every choice you've made led here, to this moment, when you finally realize you can't win. The line went dead. Mother's milk met Butcher's eyes in the rearview mirror. What do we do? Butcher looked at Frank. We prepare. He wants a show. We give him one, on our terms. How? Huey asked. He knows where we are, where we're going. He's got resources we can't match. Frank reached into his pack, pulled out a vial of V-24, held it up to the light. Not yet, Butcher said. Soon, Frank replied. The van behind them peeled off, disappeared into traffic. The tail was gone, the message delivered. Homelander was coming, and when he did, it wouldn't be quiet. It wouldn't be clean. It would be public, visible. The kind of spectacle Vought could broadcast and spin into a narrative about heroes defeating terrorists. Frank had wanted to hurt Vought, to expose them, to make them bleed. Now they were going to make him the villain. Fine. Villains could still win. They just had to be willing to pay the price. Frank pocketed the vial, watched the city roll past, counted the hours until everything escalated. Soon, the broadcast went live at 8 p.m. Every network, every streaming platform, Vought's media apparatus working in perfect synchronization. The screen showed Homelanders standing on the steps of Vought Tower, flanked by members of the Seven. Behind them, the building rose into the night sky, lit from below like a cathedral. Homelander spoke directly to the camera. His tone was measured, concerned, the voice of a protector addressing his flock. Tonight I'm speaking to the man who calls himself the Punisher, Frank Castle, a terrorist who has murdered Vought employees, stolen classified materials, and spread lies designed to undermine the institutions that keep this country safe. The camera pulled back slightly, showed the crowd gathered below, news crews, protesters held back by barriers, the whole world watching. Frank, I know you're listening. I know you think you're fighting for something righteous. But what you've done is create chaos. You've endangered innocent lives. You've inspired others to violence in your name. Homelander paused. Let the words sink in. So I'm making you an offer. Come forward. Turn yourself in. Face justice through the proper channels. If you do this within the next 12 hours, I give you my word that you'll be treated fairly, that your day in court will come. Another pause. The crowd was silent. But if you don't, if you continue hiding while others suffer for your actions, then I will find you. And when I do, there won't be a trial. There won't be mercy. There will only be an end. The camera zoomed in on Homelander's face. The expression was perfect. Resolve mixed with regret. A man doing what needed to be done. The choice is yours, Frank. 12 hours. Then, this becomes a hunt. The broadcast ended. Cut to news anchors analyzing the statement. Experts debating whether the ultimatum was justified. Social media erupting in arguments about justice versus vengeance. Frank watched from a hotel room in Queens. Different name, different credit card. The television showed the same footage on loop. Homelander's face. The tower behind him. The crowd bearing witness. His phone rang. Butcher. You see it? Yeah. It's a trap. He wants you public. Wants the world watching when he takes you down. I know. So what's the play? Frank looked at the vial of V24 sitting on the nightstand. Clear liquid catching the light from the television. I give him what he wants. That's suicide. Maybe. But he's right about one thing. This ends tonight. Butcher was quiet for a moment. You're going to use the V24. Yes. How many doses? 1. That might not be enough. Homelanders, I know what he is. Frank picked up the vial, turned it slowly. This isn't about matching him. It's about surviving long enough to make it count. Make what count? The exposure. He wants a show. I'm going to give him one he can't spin. Butcher exhaled. We're Vought Tower. Where else? That's their fortress. Security. Cameras. Every advantage goes to them. Exactly. Which is why they won't expect me to walk in the front door. Another pause, then. You need backup. No. Frank, this is my play, mine alone. You've got the evidence from the woods. You've got the V24 research. If I don't walk out, you make sure it all goes public. Every file, every video, everything. And if you do walk out? Frank didn't answer. The question assumed a future he wasn't planning for. 12 hours, Frank said. After that, it's done. He ended the call, set the phone on the nightstand next to the V-24. On the television, analysts were still debating. Some called Homelander's ultimatum reasonable. Others called it authoritarian. The arguments went in circles, the same talking points, recycled with different faces. None of it mattered. Frank had made his decision the moment his family died. Everything since had been momentum. Building, escalating, leading to this. He checked his watch. 8:30, 11.5 hours until Homelander's deadline. Frank began his preparation methodically. Weapons cleaned and loaded, body armor checked, the zinc-lined vest that would block X-ray vision, the V-24 vial secured in a reinforced case on his belt. He wouldn't inject it until necessary. The compound's effects lasted roughly 24 hours, but the real window was shorter. Peak performance hit around hour 2 and degraded from there. Timing mattered. At midnight, Frank left the hotel, took a cab to Midtown, paid cash, walked the last 6 blocks to Vought Tower. The building dominated the skyline. 60 floors of steel and glass lit from within like a beacon. At street level, security barriers formed a perimeter. Guards in tactical gear, metal detectors, cameras covering every angle. The front entrance was designed to filter. Employees with badges, visitors with appointments. Everyone else turned away. Frank walked up to the barrier. The guard on duty was young, mid-20s. He looked at Frank with the casual authority of someone who'd rejected 100 people tonight. "Building's closed to public access," the guard said. Frank pulled out his wallet, showed his actual ID, his real name. "Frank Castle. I'm here to see Homelander." The guard's expression changed. Recognition, then alarm. His hand went to his radio. "Don't," Frank said. His voice was calm. "I'm not armed. I'm not here to fight. Tell your supervisors that Frank Castle just walked in and surrendered." The guard's hand hovered over the radio, uncertain. "Make the call," Frank said. "They'll want to know." The guard keyed his radio, spoke quietly, listened to the response. His eyes widened. "They're sending someone down," the guard said. He signaled to the others. 4 more guards converged, weapons drawn, but not aimed, surrounding Frank but maintaining distance. 2 minutes later, the elevator doors opened. A woman in a gray suit emerged, mid-50s. The kind of expression that had negotiated billion-dollar contracts and never blinked. She looked at Frank. "Mr. Castle, this is unexpected." "Is it?" "Homelander gave you 12 hours. You're early." "I got tired of waiting." The woman studied him, looking for weapons, for tricks, finding nothing obvious. "You understand that by entering this building voluntarily, you're waiving certain legal protections." "I understand. I'm here to end this." "How?" "That's between me and Homelander." The woman considered, then nodded. "Search him." The guards moved in, professional, thorough. They found the pistol in his belt holster, the knife in his boot, the multi-tool in his pocket. Everything got bagged and tagged. They found the reinforced case on his belt, opened it. The V-24 vial gleamed inside. The woman's expression shifted. "What is this insurance? You brought Compound V into our building. Temp V, there's a difference." She held the case up to the light. "This is contraband, stolen property. Prove it." The woman's jaw tightened. She snapped the case shut. "Bag this separately and get medical staff on standby. If he's carrying this, he might be planning to use it." The guards complied. Frank didn't resist. Let them take everything. Weapons, equipment, the V-24, everything except the second vial hidden in a false seam in his vest lining. The backup. The one they'd missed because they were focused on the obvious. "Come with me," the woman said. They took the elevator. Private car, no stops. Straight to the 43rd floor. The doors opened onto a corridor that looked like it belonged in a modern art museum. Clean lines, expensive materials, the kind of space designed to intimidate. The woman led Frank to a conference room. Glass walls, a table that could seat 20, screens covering one wall, currently dark. "Wait here," she said. "Homelander will be informed of your arrival." She left. The door clicked locked behind her. Frank walked to the windows, looked out at the city. Manhattan spread below like a circuit board. Lights and movement. Millions of people living their lives unaware that 43 floors above them, a man was preparing to inject himself with an experimental compound and fight a god. His hand went to the hidden vial. Still there, still secure. The door opened. Frank turned. Homelander stood in the doorway. No cape, no costume. Just the suit with the eagle emblem and the smile that never reached his eyes. "Frank Castle," Homelander said. "In the flesh. You know, I have to admit I didn't think you'd actually show up. You gave me an ultimatum. I'm answering it." Homelander walked into the room. The door closed behind him. No guards, no witnesses, just the two of them. "Surrendering?" Homelander asked. "That doesn't seem like your style." "I'm here to end this, on my terms." Homelander laughed. "Your terms? Frank, you walked into my building. You're surrounded by my people. You have no weapons, no leverage, no way out. What terms do you think you're dictating?" Frank pulled the hidden vial from his vest. Homelander's eyes locked onto it. The smile faded. "What is that? Temp V. The compound that lets humans become soups for a day." "I know what it is." "Where did you get it?" "Stole it from your convoy, along with 40 others." Homelander's expression darkened. "You're bluffing. Ask your security team. Check your inventory." A pause. Homelander's eyes flared red. Just a flicker. Warning. "If you use that, it won't make you my equal. It'll just make your death take longer." "Maybe. But it'll make it public, visible. The kind of fight Vought can't bury." Frank uncapped the vial, held it up. "You wanted to make an example of me. Show the world what happens when someone challenges you. I'm giving you that chance. But it's going to be messy, and everyone's going to watch." Homelander's hands clenched. "You think this makes you brave, using stolen compound to pretend you're something you're not. I think it makes me alive long enough to hurt you where it counts. Which is your ego." Frank injected the V-24 into his arm. The liquid burned going in, hot, wrong. His vision blurred, his heartbeat spiked. Then the power hit. It wasn't gradual. It was a wall of sensation, every nerve firing at once, strength flooding into muscles that shouldn't contain it. His vision sharpened. Sounds became distinct. The hum of the building's ventilation, Homelander's breathing, the electrical current in the walls. Frank's body wanted to scream, to reject the foreign compound. He locked it down, forced control. Homelander watched. His smile returned. There it is, the desperation, the pathetic attempt to level the playing field. Frank met his eyes. "You wanted a show? Let's give them one." He threw the conference table at Homelander. The soup caught it, easily, tossed it aside like cardboard. The table crashed through the glass wall. Alarm screamed. Frank charged. His body moved faster than thought. Enhanced speed, enhanced strength. He drove his shoulder into Homelander's chest. The impact should have crumpled Frank. Instead, it drove Homelander back 3 steps. The Soup's eyes widened. Surprise, then rage. "You want to fight me?" Homelander grabbed Frank by the throat, lifted him off the ground. "Fine, let's see how long you last." He threw Frank through the remaining glass wall into the corridor. Frank hit the floor, rolled, came up ready. The V-24 was working. His body had absorbed damage that should have killed him. The pain was there but distant, manageable. Homelander walked through the broken glass. "This is it. This is your big plan. Inject yourself with bootleg compound and hope it's enough." Frank didn't answer. He ran, not away, toward the elevator, toward the central atrium, toward the space with cameras and witnesses and no way for Vought to hide what happened next. Homelander followed, flying now, faster than Frank could run, even with V-24. He caught Frank at the elevator, grabbed him by the vest, and hurled him across the corridor. Frank crashed through an office door. Desks splintered. Computer monitors shattered. He kept moving, out the other side, through another door, into a room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Homelander landed in the doorway. His eyes glowed red. "I'm going to kill you slowly. Make sure everyone sees what happens when you challenge me." The heat vision lanced out. Frank dove. The beam carved through the wall where he'd been standing. Molten metal dripped. The air smelled like burning. Frank grabbed a desk, threw it. Homelander vaporized it mid-flight, kept advancing. "You're fast," Homelander said. "I'll give you that. The V-24 works. V-24, but it doesn't make you me." Frank pulled a fire extinguisher from the wall, sprayed it directly at Homelander's face. The Soup walked through the cloud, unbothered. Then Frank swung the canister like a club. The impact caught Homelander's jaw. His head snapped sideways. Blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. Homelander touched his lip, looked at the blood. His expression went cold. "Mistake," he said. He moved. Blur of motion, punched Frank in the ribs. The impact lifted Frank off his feet, sent him through the window. Glass exploded outward. Frank fell. 43 floors of open air. The street rushed up. He hit something. No, someone. Homelander had caught him mid-fall, was holding him by the vest, hovering over the city. "See this?" Homelander gestured to the crowd below. News crews, cameras, everyone looking up. They're watching. All of them. Seeing you helpless. Seeing me in control. Frank's hand went to his belt, found the shard of glass he'd grabbed during the fall. Drove it into Homelander's eye. The Soup screamed. Dropped Frank. Frank fell again. 20 feet. Hit an exterior ledge, grabbed it. Held on. His enhanced strength kept his fingers locked, even as his body swung out over empty space. Above him, Homelander clawed at his face. The glass shard jutted from his left eye socket. Blood ran down his cheek. His scream turned into a roar. He pulled the shard free. His eye was ruined, damaged, not healing immediately. Homelander looked down at Frank. His remaining eye blazed red. "I'm going to enjoy this," he said. Frank pulled himself up onto the ledge. His body was failing. The V-24 couldn't keep up with the damage. Broken ribs, internal bleeding, pain breaking through the compound's effects. He had minutes left, maybe less. Homelander descended, landed on the ledge beside Frank, grabbed him by the throat again. "Any last words?" Frank looked past him, at the cameras below, at the world watching. "You bleed," Frank said, "just like everyone else." Homelander's grip tightened. "And you die, just like everyone else." The heat vision came, point blank. Frank couldn't dodge, but he didn't need to. He drove his knee into Homelander's groin. The soup's concentration broke. The heat vision scattered, burned into the building facade instead of Frank's face. Frank grabbed Homelander's damaged eye socket, drove his thumb in deep. Homelander shrieked. Let go, staggered back. Frank didn't let up. He tackled the soup, drove both of them off the ledge. They fell together, tumbling. 40 floors of descent. Homelander tried to fly, couldn't focus through the pain. Frank held on, kept his thumb in the wound, kept the pressure. 20 floors, 10, 5. Homelander finally broke free, caught himself. Frank kept falling. He hit the emergency air cushion the fire department had deployed below. The impact still hurt, still cracked bone, but the V-24 kept him conscious. Around him, chaos. Crowds screaming, cameras recording. Homelander hovering above one eye, ruined blood streaming down his costume. The soup wasn't smiling anymore. Frank stood. His body protested. Everything broken or breaking. The V-24 was fading. He could feel it draining away, leaving him weak. Homelander descended, landed 20 feet away. His voice was ragged. You're done, finished, and everyone saw you lose. Frank spat blood. They saw you bleed, that's all I needed. Homelander's remaining eye blazed. I'm going to burn you to ash. Go ahead. Cameras are still rolling. Homelander paused, looked around at the news crews, the phones recording, the thousands of eyes witnessing. If he killed Frank now, it would be murder. Public. Undeniable. Vought could spin a lot of things. They couldn't spin their greatest hero executing a defenseless man on live television. The calculation played across Homelander's face. Rage versus image. Violence versus control. He chose wrong. The heat vision came, full power, aimed at Frank's chest. Frank had 1 second, one choice. He dove toward a news van, grabbed the nearest reporter, used her as a shield. Homelander's heat vision stopped, inches from the woman's face. The crowd gasped. Cameras zoomed in. Every angle captured Homelander, hovering eyes glowing 1 moment away from killing an innocent. The soupy's face went white. He lowered his hands. The heat vision faded. You, he started. Frank pushed the reporter away. She stumbled but stayed on her feet, alive, terrified, but alive. Your move, Frank said. Homelander stood frozen, trapped by his own image, by the cameras, by the moment he'd spent months creating. Security poured out of the building, Vaught's tactical teams. They surrounded Frank, weapons raised. Stand down, someone shouted. Not to Frank, to Homelander. The soup turned, saw the executives watching from the building's entrance, saw the PR nightmare unfolding in real time. He flew away, straight up, disappeared into the night sky. The guards grabbed Frank, forced him to the ground, cuffed his hands. The V-24 was gone now. He was human again, broken, bleeding. They dragged him toward a van, threw him inside, doors slammed shut. Frank lay on the floor, every breath agony. The compound's after effects hitting like withdrawal. His head pounded, his vision swam. But he'd done it. Made Homelander bleed, made him hesitate, made him show the world that behind the cape and the smile was something desperate and small. The footage would spread. The images of Homelander bleeding, screaming, almost killing a reporter. Vought's PR team could try to spin it. They'd fail. The van started moving. Frank closed his eyes. Let the darkness take him. He'd survived. Barely. And that was enough. Frank woke in a cell. White walls, no windows. A medical monitor beeping beside the cot. His body was bandaged. IV drip in his arm. Every inch hurt in ways that suggested serious damage. The door opened. The woman in the gray suit entered. She looked tired, older than before. "You should be dead," she said. Frank didn't respond. "Homelander wanted to kill you. Still does. But right now you're worth more alive. A symbol of what happens when people listen to terrorists." "Is that what I am?" "That's what we're going to make you." She set a tablet on the small table beside the cot. Showed him headlines, video clips. The fight already repackaged, edited, spun. The narrative called Frank a dangerous extremist who'd used stolen Compound 5 to assault America's greatest hero. The footage had been selectively cut. Homelander's injuries minimized. Frank's actions maximized. But underneath the official story, other versions circulated. Unedited footage, different angles. People had recorded everything. And not all of it followed Vought's script. "You didn't win," the woman said. "You just made everything harder." "For both of us," Frank said. She smiled, thin, professional. "We'll see. Right now, you're going to stand trial, face justice. And when you're convicted, the world will move on." She left, the door locked. Frank lay back, stared at the ceiling. His body would heal, eventually. The V-24 had done permanent damage, but he'd survive. The question was, what came next? Vought would prosecute. They'd make him the villain, use him to justify crackdowns on dissent. Turn his symbol into something feared. But the footage existed. The truth was out there, and somewhere Butcher had the evidence from the woods. The V-24 research. Everything needed to keep the pressure on. Frank had started this as one man with a vendetta. He'd end it the same way. But now the war had witnesses. And witnesses remembered, even when Vought tried to make them forget.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And be sure to turn on notifications so you won't miss out future videos. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.